So we've got a real sharp stick here in Carolyn Harris and a godly woman. Thank you so much for sticking around and doing this. Can you just kind of give us maybe from your perspective what it's been like, you know, both as a doctor, but also married to a doctor who's running a major hospital in a large area like this, and just kind of open us up that way.
Yeah, so as a doctor, I am constantly getting emails. Let me take these off. I'm constantly getting emails from the Denton County Medical Society, the Texas State Medical Board, all the different societies that I belong to that are keeping me in the loop. Doctors are being very good at talking to each other and getting resources where they need. They're having blood and mask drives in their parking lots so that construction workers or people who happen to have a whole bunch of masks can bring them to doctors, you know. So they're just these random things. And then as Tim's wife, I'm seeing a unique perspective where, you know, that boy's been working 12 to 14-hour days for the last 2 weeks. And then he comes home and he's on Zoom meetings or phone calls or whatnot. So he's just in the thick of it all the time. To give a perspective of the whole thing, we've got this, we got this, this duality going on, okay? 99% of us won't get this, okay? At this time, we're fine, okay? And we will probably keep being fine. But if 1% of people in the Denton County area get sick and or get positive testing, okay, if 1% of people test positive, that will put our hospitals at the breaking point. Okay, so, you know, if 2% of Denton gets sick, our hospitals are overwhelmed. Okay, we're talking there's not enough ventilators to go around for how many people we think will need a ventilator. But 98% of people are still going to be great. So we're probably going to be in the 98, but we're trying to help out that 2%. Okay, and it's ironic. You had said that Christians tend to run to the trouble. That's who actually started hospitals. You know, the first hospitals were founded by Christians. And it's ironic that now our way to run to the trouble is to stay away from people. That's the best we can do. So for those of you who like numbers, in the greater Denton area, okay, that not just the city, but like Corinth and some city places just outside Denton borders, we got about 300,000 people. And in Denton County, there's 800,000 people. And we have 30 people tested positive. Okay, so you're not going to get it today. Okay, there's 30 people out of 300,000 people. You're not going to get it today. So your own level of personal anxiety, we can just breathe easy. You're not going to get it. But, you know, we need to keep the total number of Denton being positive at any one time at 1% or less. And that's based on currently people who are being tested. 20% of positive tests end up in the hospital. And 5% of people who test positive end up on a ventilator. And half of those get better, but half of those don't. Half of those die. And so we're talking about 0.7%, you know, it's even less than 1%. We're just trying to keep it under that number. To give you some comparison, some of you might have heard that New York City is just overwhelmed, just flooded. Their hospitals are just busting at the seams. Right now they have 0.02% of their population has the disease. And that's just because hospitals, you know, we don't usually need the hospitals. You know, we need like 1 per 1,000 people needs to go in the hospital, you know? And so, you know, and just for this particular virus, how many people end up on a ventilator is, and they're usually on a ventilator for 1 to 2 weeks, you know? In Denton County, we probably have about 100 ventilators. And people are, the hospitals, each ventilator is about $180,000. So they can buy some more maybe, but nobody's making them. So now GM is starting to make more ventilators, So it's a logistics thing. So whenever you hear about trying to flatten the curve, we're just trying to make it so that 1% or less of people have the disease at any one time, So really, that social distancing, that's the only weapon we have in quarantining to not let other people get it. So even though it's boring, it is your weapon to fight this disease so that we all won't get sick at the same time. And then eventually we'll all get sick and, it'll be a bad flu.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Does anybody have any particular questions that they want to ask of Carolyn?
I've got a question about how we know how it spreads. So whenever we go outside, we went out yesterday, we had to get some things, and I was just wrecked with anxiety because I was scared that maybe somebody who's corona positive sneezed in the area that I walked in, for instance. And so I'm just wondering if you could, if there's any advice on how to avoid the contagion whenever we're forced to go out for groceries, and just what we can realistically expect.
Well, when you have to go out for groceries and things like that, you don't have to worry about, did somebody happen to sneeze in this air that I'm breathing? Okay. We're not really going to get it from the air that when nobody's around us, when we're in a grocery store or somewhere like that. Okay. If you see somebody sneeze and you step into that space, well, then you theoretically could get it. But if you're just walking, staying that 6 feet away from people and nobody's sneezing or coughing right in front of you, you're not going to breathe it in. That's not how we're going to get this. You're going to get this from shaking somebody's hand. It's theoretically possible that if you put your hands on the grocery cart or some other hard surface, it's theoretically possible that could transfer, because they've shown in a laboratory that the virus does last on hard surfaces for up to a day, and in some special conditions, even up to 3 days, okay? But even that's theoretical. So ultra caution would be using the hand wipes that they give you or whatever to wipe down the cart with, or now they're starting to wipe down the carts for you when you go to Target and Walmart and Kroger. In terms of the actual stuff you're picking up, most of it's not considered a hard surface. So like a box of cereal, okay? It's not a hard surface. It would tend to last less long on not hard surfaces. So even if somebody sneezed right on something and then I touch it and it's still wet from the sneeze, that means the virus could be, if they were corona positive, on my hand. That doesn't mean I'm going to get sick. I have to touch my face, my eyes, my nose, or my mouth in order for me to get sick. So if I just very aware of what I'm doing with my hands, when I go to the grocery store, even if I touch something I shouldn't, when I go home, I wash with soap and water, singing my happy birthday song, or I use my hand sani, I'll be fine. So I have a little procedure I do. When I go to the grocery store, I check my phone and then I put it away because I don't want to keep cleaning that thing all day long. So I put things away. I get out the credit card I'm going to use before going to the grocery store so that I'm not touching myself and in my purse and all this stuff. And then I go in and I do everything and I assume that my hands are nasty. And then as I'm leaving, I use the hand sani. And then when I get home, I also wipe off my steering wheel from my car and my radio knob, and my credit card. And So that's the process I go through. Just assume that I got stuff on me. So it's we don't have to be sterile. We just have to not transfer virus to this part of us. Now, for me, if you watched me on this video tonight, I'm always pushing up my glasses or touching my nose. So, so I think I fully understand why other people wear masks to go to the grocery store. It's not so much even to protect from breathing in. It's to remind you when you go to touch your face, oh, I shouldn't be touching my face. It's more just to remind me not to do this.
I'm going to put masking tape.
You know, probably not duct tape.
Yeah.
Does that help, Brian? Are you?
Yeah, that is helpful. Also, while you bring up hand sanitizer and hand washing, I know that hand washing is most ideal, but could you break down the difference on a lay level, the difference between hand sanitizer and hand washing?
Sure. Soap, not only does it tend to break up dirt and loosen things, soap actually does break the membranes on bacteria and viruses. And so soap does kill bacteria. It does wash it off. It breaks it so it doesn't hold on to your skin or stick to your skin. So it kind of strips it off. And then, but it has to be for 20 seconds. And you do not want to wash your hands for more than 2 minutes at one time. We have a natural layer of oils that help protect our skin. And by washing your hands with just regular soap and water for more than 2 minutes at any one time, you're stripping off that naturally protective layer. So 20 seconds is fine. Don't overwash. Then on the flip side of that, with hand sanitizer, anything made from alcohol that is 70% or higher of an alcohol content will also break down the membranes of viruses and bacteria, because membranes have fat and oil in them, and alcohol breaks down greasy stuff. And so it kind of breaks it through that way and strips off your the bacteria and the viruses off of your hands. So, and that, if you're going to use hand sanitizer, I just use one pump and I try to get it between my fingernails all the way around. If you want to, while your hands are still wet, go ahead and get under your fingernails, and then let it dry. Don't dry your hands with hand sanitizer. Let it air dry. With soap and water, dry them or let them air dry. It doesn't matter. So does that answer what you, like the difference between them?
Yes, that is very helpful. And I'm sorry to hog the conversation. I've got one last question and then I'm done. Sinks, when you go to wash your hands, you turn on the hot water, it's always cold at first. Does the water have to be hot for it to be effective?
Not at all. You can absolutely wash your hand in ice cold water and it would still be just as effective if you've got soap.
That's just
Temperature has nothing to do with it. And since you're talking about, because you're not going to wash your hands with boiling water.
Yeah.
You have to have boiling water for 3 minutes to kill viruses and bacteria. I'm not going to boil my hands for 3 minutes. So it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold.
Amen.
But in terms of the stuff, when you do wash your hands, you wash your hands, and a good way to keep your sink clean is after you wash your hands, you dry them, and then take the thing you dry them with to turn off your faucet so that your clean hands aren't touching the nasty faucet that you just did. And that works if you have paper towels or something to dry them with. If you are going to use a regular hand towel, like in my house, I just reuse the hand towel, then I make sure my hands are clean before I dry my hands. And then twice a day, you can use hand sanitizer or soap and water to wash your faucets.
Yeah.
To wash the spigots so that you won't keep contaminating yourself.
Okay.
Epic. Thank you. Good stuff. What about anybody have any things that they're like afraid of, that they're, maybe something that's just maybe along the lines of, Ryan, like, am I going to walk through a mist of germs? But is there anything maybe that's just kind of on your mind that you're like, gosh, I wish I could ask a doctor, a question.
A lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter if it's above 82 degrees or 81 degrees, it can't survive. Would you address that idea?
What do you, I don't know what you mean. You mean if the outside temperature is 81 or 82?
Right.
It can survive. We don't know if the seasonal variation in most flu viruses is because of the temperature or if it's because people tend to not go to school. In school, kids are walking petri dishes. And so every fall, we always get an increase in anything, whether it's head lice or colds or illnesses, because you've got all these petri dishes together. So right now, what they're seeing in the very warm places, so Singapore and parts of Africa, they're still having just as much trouble with this virus as the more temperate regions are. So I don't think it's so much temperature related as what our culture does when it's warmer. So
if anyone's heard the advice, don't pay attention. It's going to die if it's hotter than 82 degrees outside.
Oh, yeah, that would be bad. That's false. Now I understand what you were getting at. Yeah, that would be false.
There's a lot of kind of folk wisdom going around, you know what I mean? That that people are kind of listening to. Go ahead, Annie. Go ahead and unmute yourself there.
Okay, so I have asthma. I'm in an area of Mexico that has no known cases of the virus. They are limiting gatherings to, they can't have any gatherings above 100 people, which is safe for people. But it's still like they're taking some precautions. We're not able to find any hand sanitizers in any of the pharmacies. All masks are sold out, and from my understanding, masks aren't helpful. But what are some things that I can do to like help with my asthma, so I can, one, be a little bit more cautious with my breathing in general, but two, like if I were to catch this virus, it would be like of less effect. I'm also in an area of Mexico where the hospitals aren't necessarily equipped for people with the virus. And so I'm choosing to stay at home and do kind of ministry stuff from the apartment that I'm renting with a roommate.
Awesome. Well, it's so good to see you, Annie. It's just so good to see you. In answer to your questions, you brought up a lot of things. First of all, I would say the things that you can do. You want to make sure that you're trying to do social distancing. If you're able to limit yourself to groups of 10 or less, that'd be even better. When you are out in public, if you're able to keep, the strictest guidelines are 6 feet away from other people, that's not always possible, so you just do the best you can. You do want to wash your hands with soap and water. So even though you don't have access to hand sanitizer, you do have access to soap and water. And just assume that whenever you're done interacting with people, assume that you have the virus on your hands. And so be mindful of everything you're touching. Try to turn on lights with your elbow. Try to do what you can until you can get to that sink, and then wash your hands with soap and water, and then clean up what you touched. I know it's kind of a hassle. In terms of cleaning up what you've touched, with Clorox wipes or hand sanitizer is great. If you have access to bleach, 1/4 cup of bleach in a gallon of water is the mixture. 1/4 cup of bleach in a gallon of water is what you can wipe off your counters with. You might bleach them, and when you lean on it, you're gonna, your clothes are gonna get bleached out. So, but that's a homemade way to disinfect when you don't have commercial products.
Yeah.
The other thing you want to do is make sure that you're keeping up with your general asthma care. If you're supposed to be taking your inhaler twice a day, take it twice a day. If you're supposed to be taking your Singulair or whatever, take your Singulair. If you're not supposed to be around grass because you're allergic to grass, wear a bandana, not for the COVID stuff, but for the grass. So do what you have to take care of your general asthma. In terms of you hearing whether or not masks are helpful, man, that's something great I wanted to talk about anyways. It depends on why you're using the mask. If you're using a mask to remind yourself not to touch your face, they're very helpful. If you're using the mask so that you don't put somebody else at risk, very helpful, because all of your water droplets are going to be covered inside of your mask. Very helpful. If you're using a mask to not catch it from somebody else, not really that helpful, because people are probably not going to be coughing or sneezing in your face. Unless you're caring for somebody, living with somebody, hugging somebody, and you're that close, you're probably not going to get a benefit of you wearing a mask. If you do wear a bandana or a mask or something because you know you're going to be in a crowd and you have to do that, it's better than nothing, but then you need to assume that the outside of your mask has virus on it. So don't go like this to take it off. Go like this to take it off, or come up underneath and take it off. So whatever you're using, whether it's gloves or mask, you have to assume that it's doing its job and that thing now has virus on it, and you have to not touch that.
I've also heard you can sneeze the mask off of your face. Just sneeze.
I've never seen it happen, but
That's where Heather leaves right there.
I have a question for you, Kevin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I've seen articles like on New York Times. They've released best and worst case scenarios, and some of them are saying best case scenario is over, 8 months, a year, 600,000 Americans will die, and worst case scenario, 2 million. So I hear that, and then I see like world deaths so far being across the entire world, 20,000. So reconciling those predictions and those numbers, it would seem like at some point there would be just a wave overwhelming our medical system. And so as a doctor, have you been hearing when that wave is going to be? Is it like 5 days from now? Is it 2 weeks from now? Or don't we know?
Well, it all depends. Yeah, if I'm hearing you right, when that wave hits and overwhelms our hospitals is different for every location. So Dallas County on Monday, when they said that Monday night at midnight they were going to enact their shelter in place, they put on social media and released it to reporters 2 graphs that they said, based on their current information, April 28th was when their system was going to be overwhelmed. So that's what Dallas published for everybody, was that by April 28th is when the graph curve would, the number of cases and the number of cases needing hospitals would be more than how many hospital beds we have. Now, I know in Denton, Tim's work, he has done, they're constantly updating that and evaluating that. You might have seen, there's an article, I think it's in the Denton Record Chronicle, about Denton State School, which is a home of 450 some mentally retarded and handicapped individuals who live in a group setting. And five individuals there, I think it's 2 staff members, 3 patients, but I'm not sure about that. But 5 individuals there have tested positive. And they're very concerned, the hospital is very concerned that it's going to go through wildfire in that facility. So for that facility, the county's been there every day trying to help them with testing and quarantining and isolating, because that facility alone could overwhelm all the Denton hospitals in a week and a half. So, but every day that they're tracking the numbers, every day that the number doesn't go up, we push that week and a half date one more day, one more day. So it's constantly evolving of when this could happen. In terms of the scary numbers, the best case scenario and stuff, that is if we do nothing or if we maintain what we're doing in any particular location. So like worldwide deaths or American deaths. So far, we are testing people who have been exposed or have symptoms or both. Usually it's been both. So in that people group, those people are tested. Of the positive tests, 20% will need hospitalization because this virus makes people very sick, and 5% will be on a ventilator, and 2% would be expected to die from that. So, you know, if you have 1 million people, 2% of 1 million is a big number. So it all depends on what the total number of people who test positive is. Now, somewhere around June, they're thinking that our statistics will need to change because we're hoping, and we don't think it'll happen until June, but we're really hoping that we're able to test people who don't have symptoms. People who may have thought they might have had a cold, but they haven't been exposed to anybody, because we're suspicious that the death rate is much lower. It's just we don't know it because we're not testing healthy people. So somewhere around June, we're hoping to be able to start testing healthy people. And so then those numbers will change, because then we won't say, well, 2% of everybody who's positive, because a lot of people will be positive that are very healthy. But probably from now till June, we'll stick with those numbers that 20% of people with a positive test probably going to end up in the hospital, and 2% of people with a positive test will probably end up dying. So it all depends on how many people get that positive test.
I have a question. So if you get the virus, does that mean that you'll be immune to it in the future, or could you possibly get it again in the future, like the flu, or before they come up with a vaccine, or how is that going to work?
That is a great question. We know that, great question. We know that if you have a healthy immune system, you're not on chemotherapy, you don't have a disease like AIDS that whacks your immune system specifically. If you have a normal immune system, once your body gets over a virus or a bacteria, you will not be taken down by that same virus or bacteria again, because your body will have made it's almost like when something comes at you, your body got to figure out how to make a master key to unlock this thing to destroy it. But once you got that master key, you've got that master key, and you'll always have that master key. And then, so you will always be able to fight it quicker. Now, sometimes you lose the master key. And that's what happens, like if you've got your measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine when you were a kid, and then they didn't do boosters for 20 years, and then all of a sudden you're getting a case of it again. Okay, now we know you need the booster vaccine when you go to college or when you're a junior in high school, so that it reminds you what that master key looks like. So part A of your answer is you will not get it again as badly. You might feel sick for one day, but you'll fight it off. But part B is you will not get that exact same virus again. We don't know how much this is changing. My understanding is that there are 2 strains. So you could get the other strain, kind of like influenza. We have A and B strains. Do you know what I mean? So we don't know how much this one's changing.
Can I add a little bit to that, Carolyn?
Yeah.
Just from what I've researched and seen, they've done successful tests with coronavirus on monkeys at this point and found that they are developing antibodies and they are becoming immune to the disease. So we suspect that after you get it, it will be one and done.
Mm-hmm.
There is, of course, like the seasonal flu, it will mutate and become a new strand over time. But what we see typically is there's a degeneration of the strength of the virus over time, because the people that are passing it are passing weaker forms of the virus, whereas the harder forms of the virus are actually killing its host essentially. So we saw this this is what happened with the Spanish flu in
Mhm.
1918, is that eventually it just petered out into influenza. And so we're hoping for that.
Mhm.
Amen. Yeah, we are. Thank you. The okay, so let's do one more question, and then we can wrap it up.
I have a question.
All right.
So this is kind of asking your opinion more than like straight facts, but are there any particular sources of information that you really like and think that we should also be getting our information from, or any sources that are like, this is terrible, a lot of what they're saying is awful, don't listen to them, other than like the obvious, don't, listen to memes on Facebook kind of thing?
Yeah, where I'm getting my information from is I try to stick with major news outlets. So whether it's CNN or Fox News, but even on the major news outlets, you have to be careful because sometimes they'll put up there something that was on somebody's Twitter or something that's not, it's not a good study. Do you know what I mean? So in terms of scientific stuff, I like, just putting my hat in the ring with the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control. So the WHO and the CDC. I've read other articles. Now for me in medical journals, I like the New England Journal of Medicine. I don't like the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA. I don't think any self-respecting internist would read that magazine, but I'm just throwing shade. But so there are certain ones, there are certain medical journals. When I'm looking at studies, I look at the statistical power of studies. So if any of you are familiar with statistics, I look at, how many standard deviations are they looking for, what the population size is, what the p-value is, if it's the lower the better, 0.05 or less. So I look for those kind of numbers no matter where I'm getting a source from.
Man, wow, what a blessing. Thank you, Carolyn. Ryan, we're going to go ahead and if you want to put your question in there, then we can maybe get it answered later. But Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us. This was very, very helpful. Yeah, like Parker said, very helpful. And Cody, would you just close this down in prayer, and we'll be finished.
Yeah, I'd love to. And before I pray, on that schedule, we're moving our elder prayer, our weekly elder prayer that we do from 6:30 in the morning to Thursdays at noon, so that more people can be available to pray with the elders. So it's on the schedule. It starts tomorrow. So join us if you can. We'll send out the Zoom link through all of our platforms tomorrow morning. So pray with us tomorrow. Also, let me pray tonight. God, I thank you. Well, I just thank you for Zoom. I thank you for the geniuses that somehow linked ones and zeros together so that we could all hang out and pray together. We could praise you. We could throw our fears at the foot of the cross. We can do that through this crazy technology. I'm thankful for this church. I'm thankful for the people who were able to be here tonight, God, and thankful for Ross and the staff who are working so hard to try to hold the hands of C3 to try to help us figure out how we can gather together, how we can not just react but respond and do it in front of a watching world, where we can show so many people that Jesus loves them and that they matter and that we care for them. So God, would you just continue those efforts? We ask that you bless everything that happened tonight, that you continue our efforts to love each other, to love Denton, but from a safe and hygienically sound distance. And God, thank you for Carolyn's extra time tonight. I feel like this discussion has probably resolved a lot of anxiety for people who were able to stick around. And so God, thank you for medical professionals who know so much more than I do about this, what's actually happening. And God, would you bless them? Would you bless the first responders? Would you bless the firefighters and the doctors and the nurses and the police and everybody who's responding, and even the grocery store workers who are scared, and businesses who are remaining open so that we can get the things that we need? Would you bless them and protect them, God? Would you let us as your people be thankful and show them gratitude, and thank them when we go to buy something, that we could just be joyous, and we could thank them, and we could encourage them anytime we interact with someone. God, would you just continue to bless us with your calming presence and your peace, and continue to empower us to make so much more of you than of ourselves or of this virus. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So I know I kind of shut you down, Ryan, but that's a great question. And so if you want to, can you speak to the trend of youth and infection? You know, a lot of people are like, well, there's no way I can get sick. And so they go to the beach or they hang out all the time together, and because they're young. And so, but does young mean that they're not going to get infected, or does it just mean they're not going to die as easily?
It's my understanding that young people will get this disease just as at the same rate that anybody will get this disease, but something about their body is going to help them fight it off better. And so they're less likely to be hospitalized and less likely to be on a ventilator because of this disease, but they're just as likely as anybody else to get it.
And to pass it around.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you, guys. Love y'all, and we will talk to y'all soon. God bless you.
Hi, guys.
Bye.